The story begins in a picturesque village surrounded by towering mountains and green fields that stretch as far as the eye can see. The village, isolated from the outside world, has a tranquil atmosphere, with its cobblestone streets and simple houses, all surrounded by a landscape untouched by modernity. In this refuge lives Helena, a young woman with a gentle spirit and deep gaze. Her golden hair shines in the sunlight, like wheat caressed by the wind. His eyes, large and bright, seem to reflect the clear sky and the immensity of nature around him. She is known for her skill as a craftswoman, creating delicate and elegant ceramics, which are appreciated not only in the village, but also in the surrounding regions. Helena leads a simple life but full of purpose. Your day starts early, shaping the clay with skilled hands, and your pottery shop is a haven of peace, where visitors can watch your creations take shape. She's respected for her art and the calm and collected way in which she conducts her life. The young woman is passionate about what she does, dedicating herself to each piece with meticulous attention, creating vases and plates that seem to capture the essence of nature in its purest form. Helena's life seemed complete, but there was something inside her that made her feel that something was still missing, a void that she didn't know how to fill. She dreamed of something beyond the everyday, something grander, something that would challenge her quiet routine. Everything changes the day she meets Raphael. He is an outsider, someone who arrives in the village with the promise of bringing novelty and prosperity. His striking appearance soon catches everyone's attention, a man of elegant build, with dark hair and an easy smile, who immediately conquers those around him. Raphael arrived in the village with a clear purpose. He's a merchant and intends to transform the small village into a commercial hub, bringing exotic spices, fine fabrics, and rare products that could only be found in the big cities. His plan is ambitious, and he has the confidence to convince the locals that the future will be brighter with his help. He begins to attract the attention of the villagers, promising them a life of new opportunities and riches. Soon, he meets up with Helena, and an immediate connection emerges between them. He visits her pottery shop, fascinated by the beauty of the pieces she creates. They talk about the village, their lives, their dreams, and above all, about Raphael's ambitions. He speaks with such passion about the faraway places he has visited and the adventures he has had, that Helena cannot help but be attracted to his stories. He makes her feel as if her life is too small to be limited to the village, as if there is a huge world waiting to be explored. She finds herself for the first time questioning her own quiet existence. And with each meeting, the bond between the two is strengthened. Helena's attraction to Raphael grows, not only because of the way he makes her feel unique, but also because of the promises of a grander future by her side. The connection between the two quickly deepens, and an unexpected event, such as a fate that unites them, occurs on a stormy night. Raphael, fleeing the rain that fell on the village, seeks shelter in Helena's pottery shop. They meet in an unlikely setting, with wind and rain outside, but inside the store there is only the soft light of a candle and the tranquility of the moment. The conversation flows naturally, and what starts as a friendly exchange soon turns into something deeper. They talk about their dreams, their hopes for the future, and the chemistry between them is undeniable. The looks lengthen, the words become softer, and it is at this moment that Helena realizes that she has found something more than just a friend or a merchant. She found someone who made her feel alive, someone who seemed to be the answer to that emptiness in her heart. However, what seemed to be the beginning of a fairy tale, a story that could be shared and told for generations, would soon prove to be the prelude to something far more complex and painful. Fate, which up to that moment seemed to have been kind to them, would soon show its cruelest side. From then on, the choices of both would take the story down a path of uncertainty and challenges, creating a plot that intertwines love, betrayal, and pain, which the two were not prepared to face. And you, Have you ever gone through a difficult time in your life where you needed to reinvent yourself? Or maybe you're still looking for the strength to move forward? Helena's story teaches us that, no matter how painful it may be, there is always an opportunity to start over. No matter what the future holds, it is possible to find the strength within yourself to write a new chapter. If you've connected with this story or have something to share, be sure to comment below. Share your experience or, who knows, your own new beginning. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes of this exciting journey. Stay with us and continue to follow Helena's evolution and the lessons she will have to teach us. The best is yet to come. In the days following their encounter in the storm, Helena and Raphael began to see each other more often. He became a constant presence in her life, and with that, their relationship deepened. Raphael, always charming and with his stories from distant lands, managed to make Helena feel that she was next to someone who understood her deepest aspirations. He talked about his plans to expand the business, to take Helena's ceramics to markets beyond the village, and she, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, believed that all of this could become a reality. She not only fell in love with him, but also with the idea of a grander life, away from the limitations of the village. Helena, who had previously been content with the simplicity of her existence, began to dream of something bigger. She envisioned her pottery shop expanding, her creations being appreciated by people from faraway places, with Raphael's help. He seemed like the ideal partner for this, and their involvement grew, fueled by the promises of a prosperous and exciting future. However, at the same time that the relationship became more intense, something began to change. Small details that had previously gone unnoticed began to catch Helena's attention. Raphael, previously always present and attentive, began to be absent more frequently, claiming that he needed to travel to pick up goods or trade in other villages. The justification seemed reasonable, but something didn't fit. The time he spent away seemed to grow, and whenever he returned, he brought with him gifts and new stories to tell, as if trying to make up for his absence. But behind the words, Helena couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that was growing inside her, a feeling that maybe something was wrong. On one of the hottest summer nights, the village gathered for a traditional feast, an event that celebrated the harvest and the arrival of the new spices. Everyone was excited, and the atmosphere was festive, but for Helena, the atmosphere seemed somewhat different. She watched Raphael more closely, trying to catch any signs that explained the change in his behavior. He was there, but something was out of place. He was distant, uncomfortable, and there was a coldness in his gestures that she couldn't identify. The strangest thing was the way he avoided certain conversations, especially when the subject revolved around women. He would look away, change the subject, or walk away quickly, as if trying to hide something. It was an attitude that Helena could not ignore, and deep down, she knew that something was happening. It was during this party that Helena realized something that would completely change her perception of Raphael. She saw him, on the other side of the room, talking to a woman she didn't immediately recognize. She was distant, but she could observe the exchange of glances between them, the intimacy in the whispered words and the complicit smile. The woman, who appeared to be the same age as Helena, was tall with dark hair and a piercing gaze, and although she was among other people, she and Raphael shared something more than just a conversation. Raphael's behavior was completely different from the one he had with Helena. He seemed at ease, unassuming, as if he were at home. And then Helena realized he avoided this woman, but there was something between them, something that was not being said. Her name, Mariana, popped into her mind as a silent answer, an answer Helena dreaded to hear. Helena tried to push the thoughts out of her mind, but the scene repeated itself in her head. She knew there was something there, something Raphael wasn't telling her. But for now, she has kept silent. He didn't want to believe that something so dark could hide behind the charm and promises he had made. She didn't want to see that. She didn't want to confront the reality that maybe she was being deceived. However, A growing sensation within her said otherwise. She didn't know what to make of this doubt, but she knew that sooner or later she would have to confront the truth. Doubt took hold of Helena in the following days. Something inside her said that the suspicions were not unfounded, that there was something hidden, something she didn't want to see. But the pain of facing the truth seemed unbearable. She tried to convince herself that she was being paranoid, that her imagination was creating a monster where there was none. Raphael never showed any clear indication of betrayal, and yet, the moments when he was distant, the furtive glances exchanged with Mariana, the inexplicable absences, all of this accumulated, creating a weight that was increasingly difficult to carry. Helena, who had previously given herself body and soul to the relationship, now found herself adrift, lost in a sea of doubts and insecurities. Every word Raphael said seemed empty, and his gestures, which had previously been affectionate and sincere, now sounded mechanical and forced. The nights when he came back late, with repeated stories about his travels and business, began to lose their luster. Helena could no longer feel the same admiration for him. She wondered more and more if she had ever truly met him. The last straw came on a rainy afternoon when Helena entered the pottery store and found Raphael's bag lying on the table. Normally, he never left his belongings there, always careful with his personal belongings. She hesitated for a moment, but the momentum was stronger. With trembling hands, she opened her purse and found something that made her freeze in horror. A note. The delicate handwriting and simple message were enough to shatter his world. "I meet at 6 p.m. in the clearing. I'll be waiting, as always." The pain was instant and overwhelming. Helena didn't need any more proof. The note was what was missing to confirm his suspicions. Mariana's name hovered in her mind, like a shadow that would never leave. What was supposed to be a moment of discovery brought with it a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. What would she do now? Would you confront Raphael directly, or would he remain silent, trying to maintain the facade that everything was fine? The momentum was strong. She could no longer live with this constant doubt. She could no longer deceive herself. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. However, instead of confronting him immediately, she decided to wait. It took more than a note to destroy his life. Helena knew she needed more proof, something concrete that would give her the certainty that she was really being betrayed. That night, while Raphael was on another of his trips, Helena armed herself with courage. She prepared herself for what would be the most difficult journey of her life. He knew that there was no turning back, that the consequences of his actions would be irreparable. But at the same time, she also knew that she could no longer continue living in lies. She needed to understand the truth, no matter what the cost. She remembered the clearing, the place where the note guided her. The meeting seemed to be the moment when everything would be clarified, the breaking point between what was and what would be. What Helena did not imagine is that this clearing, in which pain would meet the truth, would become the scene of a revelation even more devastating than she could have foreseen. In the late afternoon, with the sky full of dark clouds, Helena followed the path to the clearing. His heart was pounding, his mind was racing, and his breathing was heavy. Each footstep seemed to echo louder than the last, and the tension in the air was palpable. She didn't know what she would find there, but she could already feel that nothing would be the same as before. When she reached the clearing, the scenery she found before her eyes left her paralyzed. Raphael was there, but he was not alone. By her side was Mariana. They were arm in arm, exchanging looks of complicity and sweet words. There were no more doubts. What Helena had suspected all this time was there, right in front of her. Raphael, the man with whom she had thought of sharing her life, was with another woman, and not just any woman. He was with Mariana, the same woman she had seen avoiding conversations with him, the woman he tried to hide from Helena. The shock was so great that Helena could barely breathe. She stood there watching, helpless, as a spectator of her own pain. Raphael and Mariana's words echoed in his mind, and each sentence seemed to cut deeper. I knew you would come, Mariana said, with a soft smile on her lips. But you always have the same behavior, don't you? He always arrives late, always has excuses. I should have noticed. Raphael, realizing that Helena was there, stopped for a moment. His eyes, which had previously been full of charm, were now empty, guilty. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. There were no more justifications, no more promises that could heal the pain he had caused. Helena, faced with that scene, felt her world crumble. She knew that there was no more room for lies, that that moment defined the end of everything she believed in. His heart was broken, his confidence destroyed. But at the same time, she knew that this was the only way to free herself from the emotional prison she lived in. She turned her back, and without looking back, began to walk back to the village. What was once a love story now became a nightmare, and Helena knew she would need to rebuild her life from the ashes of pain. In the days that followed, Helena and Mariana began to grow stronger in an unexpected way. The bond that once might have been marked by rivalry was now being shaped by empathy and mutual understanding. Both had been deceived, and both were seeking ways to rebuild their lives after the pain Raphael had caused. Although Helena was still far from forgiving Raphael, she felt that Mariana's presence by her side was the only thing that gave her some kind of balance. With each meeting, Helena's feelings seemed to be clearer, more defined. She knew she no longer wanted to live in the shadow of a man who, in fact, never loved her as she had thought. She also knew that she could not continue to be attached to her pain, as that would only perpetuate the wound. Pottery, which had once been a source of pleasure, now represented a form of liberation. When she molded the clay, she felt as if she were renewing not only the pieces, but herself. Each curve she drew in the clay seemed to shape a new future for her as well. But the truth was still pending. The confrontation with Raphael needed to happen. He was still in the village, hiding in the house that had once been the home, where the two shared moments of happiness. Raphael's silence during those days only made the situation more untenable. He knew that his betrayal had been exposed, but he had not yet shown any sign of remorse. To him, it seemed that the best way would be to disappear and leave the village behind. But Helena knew that this would not be enough. He needed to face the consequences of his actions. It was on a grey afternoon that the moment came. Helena, with her heart beating strongly in her chest, knew that the conversation with Raphael would be inevitable. She and Mariana met once again, this time in the small village square. And together they decided it was time to put an end to that situation. They could no longer live for what Raphael had done. They needed to be masters of their own destinies. He needs to understand that his choices have affected more people than he realizes, Mariana said, with a firm determination in her voice. Helena looked at her, feeling a mixture of gratitude and admiration for the strength that Mariana showed. She didn't know if she would be able to act with the same confidence, but she knew that if she didn't face it, she would be allowing her pain to continue to dominate her life. With firm steps, the two headed to Raphael's house. The air was heavy with tension, and each step seemed to be a burden, but also a release. When they reached the door of her house, Helena hesitated for a moment, looking at Mariana. Both knew that this was not just a confrontation, but the closing of a chapter of their lives. Raphael, as he opened the door, seemed visibly shaken, as if he knew what was coming. His eyes wandered away from Helena, and he tried to hide behind the door, but she wouldn't let him. She entered, determined not to allow him to ignore her once again. "You won't hide from me?" said Helena, with a firmness she herself didn't know she possessed. "It's time for you to own up to what you've done." Raphael sighed, his face reflecting a mixture of regret and defensiveness. "Helena, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want things to be like this." "But you did," she replied, her voice almost breaking. "You lied, betrayed, and used me, used Mariana. You destroyed what seemed to be a perfect life, and you can't just get away with it. You can't run away." Mariana, who until then had remained silent, approached. "You have to understand that your actions had consequences. You hurt us, both of us. Now, you have to pay for it." The confrontation was intense, and the words exchanged were like sharp knives, each cutting deeper into the truth that was finally being revealed. Raphael tried to justify himself, tried to explain his actions as if they were excusable, but the weight of pain in Helena and Mariana's words made his excuses ring hollow. "I made a mistake," he said, his eyes full of remorse. "I never meant to hurt you. I was lost. I didn't know what to do." But Helena no longer believed his words. "What you did has no excuse. No matter what you were feeling, you chose to hurt us. Now, it's too late." The silence that followed was heavy, as if the air around them was charged with a dense and irreversible energy. Helena knew that, at that moment, she was not just getting rid of Raphael. She was breaking free from the pain he had caused and perhaps finally starting to heal. She looked at Mariana, who gave her a soft smile, an expression of mutual understanding. They had gone through the same suffering, and now they could move on. Raphael finally seemed to understand the magnitude of his actions. He was no longer the charming man who had conquered the village. Now he was a defeated man, with no words to save himself. Helena and Mariana didn't want to know about him anymore. They were free. When they left Raphael's house, the village looked different. The sky was clear, and the fresh air seemed to carry a sense of renewal. Helena knew that her journey was just beginning. She was no longer the same woman who had been deceived by Raphael. She was stronger, wiser, and now she was ready to rebuild her life. "Now let's move on," said Helena, with a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. "And this time, we're going to do things our way." Mariana smiled, knowing that their friendship was a new beginning, something that no lie or betrayal could destroy. Together, they were ready to live, to start over, and to heal the wounds of the past. The village, with its mountains and green fields, was no longer the same place. But for Helena and Mariana, it now represented the promise of a new future, where they would be the protagonists of their own stories, and so their lives began again. In the days following the confrontation with Raphael, Helena began to understand that even after the pain, the future still offered opportunities. The pain of the betrayal still weighed heavily on her heart, but the strength she was discovering within herself motivated her to move forward. Her ceramics have once again become her greatest passion, now with a touch of renewal and self-discovery. Each piece she created became an expression of her resilience, a proof that despite everything, she still had control over her own life. Mariana, on the other hand, had become a valuable ally. The bond between the two grew unexpectedly. They began to support each other in ways they hadn't imagined before, sharing their fears, their insecurities, and most importantly, their dreams for the future. Helena never imagined that a friendship could emerge after so many wounds, but somehow she felt that this new friendship was the healing she would need to move forward. Helena began to realize that she was no longer tied to the village the way she had been. The place that had once represented the scene of his lost love was now a fertile field for his growth. She knew that the pain of Raphael's loss wouldn't go away right away, but she was determined not to let it define her future. The village, the pottery, the mountains, all of them were now part of a new phase, a phase where she would choose what to do with her broken heart. She would find herself in the small pottery shop on a silent morning, shaping a new piece with muddy hands. The soft sound of his work echoed through the empty shop, but somehow loneliness was no longer a burden. She felt at peace. Helena knew that her journey was far from over, but the first stage of her healing had been achieved. The piece she was creating seemed to symbolize this. The cracks and flaws in the clay formed a fragile figure, but strong at the same time. While she worked, Mariana entered the store with a calm smile on her face. The two greeted each other, and Mariana approached Helena, looking at the piece she was creating. "It's beautiful," Mariana said, lightly touching the clay. "You found your way back." Helena smiled, a genuine smile, and looked at the piece she was molding. "I'm still finding myself, but I know I'm going in the right direction." The silence between the two friends was comfortable, as if words were no longer necessary. They had been through so much together, and now they were ready to move on, even though the past still bore scars. In the distance, the sound of children playing in the village square, the wind gently passing through the leaves of the trees, and the sounds of animals in the field seemed to indicate that somewhere between the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, life was still on its course. Helena knew that the coming days, months, and even years would be challenging, but she also knew that with Mariana by her side and the strength she had discovered within herself, she could face any adversity. "I know what I have to do now," Helena said, with renewed determination. "I'm going to keep creating, and I'm going to live the life I've always dreamed of." Mariana looked at her, her eyes full of understanding. "And it will do it in the best possible way." That night, after sunset, Helena sat alone at the edge of the field, looking at the stars that were beginning to shine in the night sky. She felt a sense of freedom, a sense that, finally, she was beginning to break free from the weight of the past. She no longer needed Raphael's love. She no longer needed empty promises. She had everything she needed inside herself. Helena's story was just beginning, and she was ready to live what would come next. The village, the mountains, and the pottery were now more than just a setting. They were parts of a journey that would lead her to discover not only what the future had to offer, but also who she truly was. And so, the first episode comes to an end. But for Helena, it was just the beginning of a new life, where she would be the protagonist of her own story. And so comes the first episode of this story that will undoubtedly touch your heart. Helena's journey has only just begun, and many twists and turns are still to come. If you were moved, shared her pain and hope, be sure to follow us in the next episodes. Want to know what will happen next? So, don't forget to like this video, leave your comment, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any details of this exciting story. Share this episode with your friends and let us know. What lesson have you learned from Helena's story so far? We want to know your opinion and your expectations for what is to come. Let's go together on this journey of growth, restart, and overcoming. See you in the next episode.